What up, what up, what up? It's your boy DeMarcus, and this is another episode of The Life of a Multifacet. I appreciate the folks that have been rocking with me, and then all my newcomers. I definitely appreciate y'all. Make sure y'all stick around, check out some of the older episodes, and tap in with the ones I'm going to be dropping. But I'm going to be real with y'all today. Man, I ain't felt motivated in a few weeks. I haven't felt motivated in a little minute. But that's great, though. That's great. As odd as that sounds, as crazy as it even it sounds for myself saying that out loud, that's actually a really good or a great place to be in. Especially when you've been putting in work in a lot of areas and when you've been able to move forward in many ways. That's actually a great place to be in. Because it's a great sign of uncomfortability. It's you going in the opposite direction of comfort. Let me explain. Like when you think about motivation, oftentimes motivation from the outside can't last forever. And you have to learn how to be able to find that within yourself. I would say a lot of times it can't last forever. You know, external motivation, it can spark you, but it's not going to be able to sustain you. And a lot of people think the problem is that they're not motivated enough. But that's not true. You know, the real problem is that they built their whole life around a feeling that was never meant to stay. And that's so real because a lot of folks haven't come into contact with believing that they're more than the motivation, believing that they're worth more or valuable than the motivation that comes into their presence. Like you have to really believe that the motivation that comes into your life temporarily, you are worth more than that, or your value goes beyond that. And I say that because if I feel that my worth is based on a couple exciting moments that happened to me for accomplishing something within a day or two or whatever it is, well, I'm going to feel that my value can be based off of that. So my energy and then my actions I can have so much excitement because of accomplishment that I just had, right? Or because of something that somebody said or because of something that a person presented. But what happens when that goes away? What happens when that excitement dies down, right? And my value or the worth that I feel that I had was only placed on that, then I'm going to keep trying to search for that same type of result. And I may be worth even more than that. I may have even more about me that's amazing. But if I haven't learned how to be able to separate myself from external motivation, I'm going to always leave that as the room for comparison. I'm always going to leave that as the ceiling until I unlock a way to be able to get to a new ceiling. But that takes you to actually have to sit within yourself to unlock what a new ceiling could look like. I was telling somebody the other day, you know, a person that is super dope in what they do. You know, they have a lot of goals and aspirations, and there's someone that does amazing work in the field of in their career field. But oftentimes when we're speaking, they'll want love or they want appreciation in their current job role, but feel frustrated when they don't get that type of love that they expect, knowing that the work that they do is on a much higher scale, and knowing that without them, a function would actually fail. So they know this, but then they're expecting a certain type of excitement internally from people that may respect them sometimes and may not, right? Oftentimes, especially when we're in many environments to where we're around other people that are doing the same type of work that we are, they're having similar type of goals, there can be that internal competition. And it's just naturally going to happen because everybody wants to do a great job at whatever they are doing in their day-to-day. Like it should be everybody's goal. The problem many times, and what I was explaining to this individual, is that you're tying your worth to the validation that somebody can give you. You're tying your worth to the accomplishments that you would achieve from what you do at this job or this career path, right? And you're looking at your worth based on people that don't even get a chance to even see you outside of this element. So they don't even care or know you beyond this particular entity. But the bigger thing is, that's when you feel the most motivated, is when you get that type of validation externally. But then when you talk to said person, when I talk to some others in my life and then ask them about things that they're excited for about themselves, they can't speak on that. Or they don't have any type of other goals for them outside of what they do for their day-to-day that has to do with somebody else's goal and dream. So of course you're not going to be able to find any type of motivation, because you're only motivated based on the work that you do, and then based on hopefully getting love and appreciation that you think that you should get from your day-to-day work, when people don't even respect you as a whole individual. I don't know if that makes sense to some of you all, but I'm sure you've experienced it. And you're going in and do your job, you're doing your work, and you're expecting a certain type of praise. And oftentimes, because we spend most of our time at work, we feel as if that because we get that praise, hey, this is finally something I've unlocked. I'm motivated now. Like, CEOs reaching out to me, or people are looking at my projects and they're super, super excited for me. They're telling me how good they think that I'm doing. They want to implement this, implement that. But now everything is tied to your job. Nothing's tied back to you. And I was explaining to this person, like, you've got to be able to find things for yourself. I've been trying to work on the stuff and things. So if y'all hear me say it a few times, I'm going to get better with that. So check out my previous episodes and y'all will see what I'm talking about. But that stuff and things, Mr. Graves, I appreciate you, because I'm still working on that. But a lot of times, people won't have anything that they are looking forward to outside of work. They don't have anything within themselves that they can see of true value or worth outside of what people have told them. So when you're trying to find that motivation internally, that intrinsic motivation or the inspiration, many times people can't find that because external validation is the only thing that they've known. It's the same way in the example when I said about speaking to people. Like, oftentimes I'll speak to people and they'll have goals, ambitions. They'll talk about what they plan to do and all this and that. But the big part about the conversation moving forward is based on validation. Hey, I know the market is going to be able to tell me this is a dope idea, or somebody else is going to be able to tell me this is smooth, or shoot, by me getting this out, it sounds good, so I'm going to be locked in. But that don't last. Because if in the moment you feel excited about doing that, you feel on top of the world, okay, that's great. But then after a week or two, after a month, after a year, you ain't put no effort into that, where did that go? That comes down to discipline. That means that the discipline ain't there. But also in the piece of having discipline, you've got to be able to look at yourself and say, I'm worth it. I'm valuable enough. I know that no matter what, the work that I put in and the time and energy I put into myself, it means something. So I'm going to be able to utilize that to say, if there's days where I don't have any motivation in my life, days where things aren't going well, I believe in myself in some way where I'm going to use that as the moving factor for me to be able to push forward in this life. And I gave both of those examples as far as like the career piece, and then also the piece on folks speaking to you about what they're going to do and not going to do, because oftentimes those are two areas in which I've seen where external validation are big like factors in folks' feelings if they can move forward. And also the only reason why I can speak in that type of way is because I've been somebody like that in the past. Early on, when you getting into your first jobs, you're looking, like when I was working at Sprint, you're looking at it as a way to say, man, I'm doing all this work, I'm putting in all this effort and everything, I'm gonna be seen. I'm hitting all the numbers, I'm hitting all the metrics, like shoot. I know I'm that guy. I'm being recognized as that guy. So I'm doing everything that I need to. I'm solid. I'm talking to friends and family about goals. It's sounding good. Things are happening good at the job. So typically that's what everybody's focused on. So if I'm telling them that the job's going good, cool. But then I'm also telling them about my goals. So sure, I'm really locked in. I'm right on that path. But then things change. You may not be at the same job. The job ain't flowing like you really wanted to. Those goals and stuff that you have, you don't really feel as inspired to be able to talk about it in those same type of way. You get to a point to where that motivation moves you so much that you start to lose yourself. Because now that motivation turns into the validation. That motivation that you felt in those moments, you utilize it to validate yourself, but you also utilize it in other spaces to feel validated. There's many times where, as a person that really feel like he was hurt at many times, I'm utilizing that motivation. So where I was in certain spaces that didn't appreciate me, I'm like, okay, I feel motivated. Let me go into a space where I know that people ain't really as receptive to what I got going on. And because I'm motivated, let me go ahead and speak about goals and stuff that I have. Maybe I'll be validated. Then what happens when that motivation dies off? And you back to square one. Then you in a negative position. Because not only are you back to square one, now you may have regrets that you even opened up to some people that you know you shouldn't have. Then you feel worse because you may know that you can achieve some of these goals that you have set up for yourself, but you don't know like why your mind and body doesn't want to put energy into it. Now you feel all over the place because you kind of almost feel like a scam artist. You're like, I had set out all these goals. I said all these things that I was going to do. And even in disappointing, not even necessarily disappointing others, even in failing the mission of not following through with things that you told others, the biggest thing is you disappointed yourself. And somebody can be disappointed in you. Somebody can feel somebody. You can feel the energy when somebody that truly cares about you is disappointed. But then when you really feel that for yourself, when you have that or take that accountability, and you like, man, I feel off. That's different because now you've gotten to the space of saying, I've got to actually sit with what I've done, and I got to figure this out. So let me not get too off track, but tell y'all about like how I find ways to inspire myself or find those pockets of motivation and run with it. So for instance, I told y'all that I ain't really been as motivated in the last few weeks. I would say like in the last few months it's been up and down, but I'll say the last few weeks since I got my keloid surgery, my energy's just been like all over the place. And cool, right? So whenever I was, let's say last year, towards the end of last year, I still wasn't really inspired to do as many food videos and stuff because in the season that I was in, I have no money. Like your boy was like broke. So like what I did have, I was penny pinching. But during this whole period of me learning myself even more and continuing to push through, I continue to reiterate my value and my worth. And y'all hear it in my podcast episodes because at the end of the day, the world can continue to move and do what it does, but if I'm not at the center of my life, ain't nothing gonna move forward. Because nobody else is responsible for me. So that's why I started getting in shape even more. I'm focusing on my diet and focusing on my working out and utilizing the resources that I had to still move forward in my day-to-day and continue to show up for myself. Now, what happens is that when you can't work on certain things because you don't have money, you don't have the resources or whatever, you may have to shift in what that perspective looks like. So as I told you, I didn't really have money to do my mashups at all. So I couldn't rely on doing a mashup each week, right? But we take it a step back. I did 60 mashups the year and a half before. So in a year and a half, the year before, I did 60 mashups. I did about 60 mashups in a year and a half, right? But that was before I got into this new space I'm in, which was consistency and discipline. So before I'm like, okay, if I'm if I feel motivated to do the mashups and I be consistent, I'm thinking in my mind that's what's going to get me a bigger audience. That's what's going to get people rocking with me. Not until you learn that that don't do nothing for you. Because if you keep on feeding the content and your goal is to base it off the motivation that you have, that's going to die off. And sometimes the motivation can die off not because you may not be in the zone, but because you got to readjust your life based on where you're at in a particular season. I wanted to do the mashups. I was locked in, but the season said, DeMarcus, you got to focus on the other areas. Yeah, maybe I could have done some cheaper mashups. I could have still maybe put a bit of time, which I did. Like some of the food, if there were moments where I had a little bit of money and I was able to put food into it, and I recorded some of the videos, but I didn't release them in the way that I was. Because you also got to look at content as something that you continue to build over time. It's how people are able to see you, right? It's that visual layer that lets people get insight. But to be able to build a true brand, and what I'm learning is you got to be able to have offerings that get people to want to buy from you, that make people want to continue to take your brand to another level. If you keep showing visual stuff, hey, people are going to see you, but you eventually got to be able to have offerings that make people stick around. So where I was at with my content at that time, it was great to be able to learn how to be consistent, but also that consistency was crossing with motivation. So then what happens? That motivation starts to kind of die down because how life's moving in the way that it does. But towards the end of last year, what did I tell myself? Once I got a new gig, I said, I'm not going to wait till January 1, but the one thing that I can do is let me find a way to post older content that I have, mixed with some newer content, and let that flow until I get back into the mindset in the place that I want to be to really knock out the mashups. And this is how you're able to find ways to get yourself inspired and get yourself to dive into those small pockets of intrinsic motivation. Because when you wait on an external factor, if it's like, hey, DeMarcus, where the mashup in? Hey, I need you to cook something for me. How much does it cost? That's the same way I look at like inbound and outbound versus in a sales role. Inbound is when somebody's going to come in and tell you what they need or what they're looking for. So you have an easy talk track. It's not that somebody's necessarily going to buy. Not that somebody's guaranteed to say, I want to buy at this particular moment. They could be shopping around. But you know what somebody is looking for because they have a specific use case at that moment. They have a pain point. Outbound is like somebody can maybe know about your brand, but you've got to find a way to do your research or find a way to spit out the right messaging so they'll be willing to have a conversation with you. You've got to be able to find some way to keep people engaged, even when it may not be on their radar at the moment. And that's what I did. How I was able to break into the content piece, even when I didn't really feel as inboundish or directly inspired or motivated with what was going on. I said, you know what? Let me find ways to keep that flow moving. Because there was no external validation in the sense of whenever I stopped doing the mashups, I didn't really have anything on the pages that was just like, hey, we need those to continue to drop, boom, boom, boom. I had some people that I'd be rocking with that's like, hey, DeMarcus, like how the food content been going and stuff like that. But when you're like a smaller creator, you don't necessarily have these points of external validation to keep you going or external motivation. So you got to find that within yourself. But for me, what I did is I said, I got all this content that I've been sitting on and stuff that I had from some years ago and however that people have seen, but everybody ain't seen that. Where my target audience can be and who my people are, they haven't seen that yet. So if I might not be in the space to be able to cook and stuff like I want to now, but let me let that old content move because I got some fire stuff in there. So what did I do? I found little pockets of where I can go in and edit videos on the TikTok. I wasn't super hyped to go in and edit the videos, but I had to find a system. See, you have to push yourself in a way where it ain't going to feel easy. It's not going to feel as sexy. It's not going to feel as cool. But you got to do a little bit at a time because then on the days where you feeling that you're high, that's where that motivation, that intrinsic motivation is on another level. And that's where if that intrinsic motivation is super high, then that external validation is going to push you on cloud nine, but you don't have to focus on that extrinsic validation because the intrinsic is already moving. Let me try to make more sense of that. If your intrinsic motivation is super high, that internal piece, and it's on cloud nine, and you locked in, the extrinsic motivation or that extrinsic validation, that's just going to take things to a whole nother level because you've already been locked in with yourself. But you've got to use those little pockets of motivation when the extrinsic is not there, and that's what's going to help you to be able to move forward. And that's what's worked for me. Like the moments like last year and stuff where I was not really as motivated as far as working out, I said, you know what, like we got to do a little bit at a time. And I'm someone where you want to try to knock out everything at once. You want to try to get into all these big pockets at once, but you realize that's how you start procrastinating. That's how you get burnt out. Because if I'm trying to knock out all this stuff at once, if I'm trying to knock out this big task, at the end of the day, it's going to be based off of motivation, because if this is something I need to do over a course of time, I got to figure out how to be able to get back into that pocket. So like today, me recording the podcast episode, I didn't really feel like doing nothing with my content. I didn't really feel like going in and even cooking or nothing like that. Hell, when it came to even me going and making a beat and all that, I said, man, I don't even really feel like it. But you know what I said? Let me try to do something. And how I find the pockets of motivation for myself, I force myself to sit in the environments that I know can bring me excitement. In my day-to-day, like I know the environment or the spaces I can be in that can bring me excitement. I know for a fact if I sit in my chair where my microphone and stuff is, or if I just put my microphone in my hand, I know that I get excited to do my podcast episode. I know that even if I go on my computer and I have a second to where I feel like I want to make a beat, even if I don't make anything, if I just shut it back down, by me clicking and going into FL Studios, that reminds me of how it feels whenever I'm making a beat. If I go into my phone and I look at some of my food videos, even when I don't feel like making any type of food, I look and see how dope it was when I created a certain type of meal. So even if I may not create something for a few days or a week or so, if I continue to find ways to still go back into that photo gallery, I'm going to be able to eventually get into that mindset. So you got to really train your mind to go into those spaces that make you feel comfortable, but they get you excited. For a minute, when it came to my journaling and it came to reading some books, and when it came to my planner, I haven't wrote in my planner but once this year. Last year, I was in my planner all throughout the year. But a big part of that, I was in survival mode as well, too. So I had to make sure I was structured and locked in. This year, I haven't had to be in it like that, but it's important for me to be planning and be into my journal and everything. So what did I do last night? I said I went into my room. I just grabbed my journal. I grabbed my planner. I grabbed a couple books, and I just threw them on the couch next to me. Because by having them in my environment, it allows me to say, you know what? Hey, this is something that's close to you. DeMarcus, you need to pick this up. I challenged myself. I said, I don't really feel like reading. I don't feel like writing. I don't feel like doing much. But I picked up one of the books. I think it was the 10X is greater than 2X book that my brother had recommended. I picked that up. I started reading a couple pages, and I was like, I ain't really feeling this at the moment. Then I picked up the Fuck Them book by Wallow, and I read 20 to 30 pages of that. Sometimes what happens is that by you pushing yourself into a certain type of mode, you unlock a piece of you, because given where you feel or the season that you may be in, you can feel that something may be more relatable. When I read the few pages that Wallow had put in the book, I still really wasn't necessarily as like hyped to be in the zone for that, but it was more relatable than the 10X equals 2X. But then I also know some days where I'm flowing into my content zone, the 10X is greater than 2X is going to be better than the Fuck Them book. But sometimes you got to put yourself in the uncomfortable spaces of saying, I don't feel like things are really flowing in the way that I want to, but let me at least grab something or gravitate to a space that I know when I'm in that environment, it makes me happy. Because if you start to at least lean towards that, if you start to pick up that book or pick up that microphone or whatever, your mind will start to process, okay, I know how I feel when I'm in the zone. And over time, that's done better for me than anything has. And I told y'all many stories about when it came to making beats. I do beats for fun. But during the pandemic, by me breaking it up into small increments, that allowed me to get to a point to where I could find a zone that I can get in that would allow me to be free flowing and feel like I'm evolving. Like I didn't have to feel like I learned how to be able to just do it for 5 minutes, get off the computer, and then come back to it. But I had to train my mind to do that because I wanted to find ways that I didn't just have to be motivated to be able to do something. But over time, you got to realize that if you just do a little bit at a time, that's how you'll find those ways of being able to dabble into those pockets of motivation. Again, when it came to the food content, by me having where I'm releasing new TikTok videos every single day, that allows me to still be in my food zone, but it allows me to be able to find the energy for me to be able to lock into the food the way that I want to. But by me having the food moving, I'm still doing food content. But I can do it at a pace to where if my energy is not at the high to do a mashup, I still got food moving. If I'm making beats, my energy may not be as high to go back and work on some of the beats I've done in the past, but if I do a little bit of something here and now, if I go in and I do 5 minutes of a beat, and I may do like 5 minutes here and there, I may create multiple new beats. Then when I'm in that zone, I can go back and work on some of the stuff in the past, and my mind's gonna be at a space to where it's like, are we locked in today? Shoot, that sound that you was making when you only had like that 5 minutes, that was whack, but shoot, today we back on that same beat and we've been on it for an hour or two. The biggest key for me is on the days I don't even feel like showing up, still doing a little bit. Not feeling as if I gotta show up and be my best self, because I know that I can't be it that day. And if I force myself to do that, I'm gonna get burnt out. So the biggest key that I've learned is, and what's helped me even today, I said, man, as far as even, I'll be real with y'all, recording this episode. I recorded 5 times. I got to 15 minutes, 20 minutes. A few times I got to 3 and 5 minutes. I deleted them all. Why? Because I didn't really feel that the story was flowing in the way that I wanted to. Even in doing this one, I feel like I said some really dope stuff, but when I hear it back, it may not flow in the way that I wanted to, but sometimes it takes that, right? Like sometimes it may take you, like I'll get on the podcast or I'll get the microphone, and I'll be talking, and I'll be like, you know what? This ain't really hitting. I may still save the video. I may not save it at all. But the fact that I showed up and a day that felt uncomfortable, a day I didn't feel motivated, I allow myself to get in the space that I know that makes me happy. That's what allows me to show up on the days where I really, really want to take off. Like the days where you feel really motivated, where the intrinsic and the extrinsic work together, you're going to be on cloud 9 and stuff's going to be moving because now you can perform at a higher volume. But you got to let the content, you got to let the pieces of life flow. You got to be able to add a bit over time, because by the time that you look back and you sit down and you focus on the days where stuff is at a high, you have so much that you've worked on that now it makes that day even easier. If I sit back and I write down multiple topics that I want to speak about on my podcast versus waiting till the day of that I'm feeling super motivated to do that, well, shoot, I'm going to be able to tailor those more. I'm going to have 50 plus different topics I can speak about versus me trying to think about it on the day that I feel excited. I'm going to be able to flow better. I'm going to be able to get into my state of mind better. I'm going to be able to get into my zone. So even when it came to the keloid content, I had my surgery done. I was overthinking about how I wanted to put more of the content out. And I had been putting it off for a couple of weeks because I'm like, man, I just didn't really feel in the zone to do it. But then I just got into my bag the other day. I knocked out 20-something videos. Why? Because it started off with me being like, man, you know what? I'm kind of feeling like I should edit a video, maybe not. I went in, was Just went into my phone and just started editing. First, I did a little bit. I did like 5 minutes. Cool. Walked around a bit in my apartment, sat down for a minute, pushed myself to do 10 more minutes. Next day ended up turning into, I did a couple hours. Because I was able to build that. I didn't wake up feeling like I wanted to edit videos, but by going into those little pockets and allowing myself to do a bit at a time, that allowed me to be able to say to Marcus, like, we can show up how we are today and not have to be perfect, because today I feel like editing 100 videos, I'm already going to have 30 to 40 that I've edited. So then I'm going to have 140. And I've done that the same way with the TikTok stuff. When I was trying to do 40, 50 videos a day, that was just too much. I didn't feel excited to do it. But the days where I would do 2, 3, 4, some days I may do 1, cool. If I do 1 today, 2 tomorrow, 3 the next day, and 4 the next day, that's 10 videos. And if I'm releasing 1 each day, there's going to be a overlap in how many videos that I have from the days that I started that. So if I have 10 videos and I'm on day 3 or day 4, I'm still 6 days ahead. So then if I come back around and the next day I feel like editing 20 videos, I'm 26 days ahead, or I'm 25 days ahead. So then there, you've been able to keep that cycle going. Then say, for instance, I get on that day 7, I don't feel like editing, or I go 2 weeks, I don't feel like editing no content. We subtract that 25 or 26 by 14, I'm at 12, 13 days. Still of content that I have left where I can still post each day. Because we started off, if I said that I did 10 videos in 4 days, right? And I've been releasing a video each day. So if I release 1 video, if I did 10 videos in 4 days and I released 1 video each day for 4 days, I still got 6 videos left. And then on that 6th day, if I wanted to batch 20 videos, that's 26 videos. And then if 2 weeks is 14 days, where I don't feel like doing nothing, once I subtract 14 from that 26, or if it was 25 videos, I'm still going to have 12 to 11 videos. I said 13 at first, 12 to 11 videos. That's going to overlap. So I don't have the 2 weeks I didn't feel like doing nothing, and I still got 11 more or 12 more days or 13 or 14 more days to be able to work with videos. And by that time, I may be hella motivated to edit more content, and I may still not be, but I still already have enough in advance. That's how the batching the content works. That's how batching your life works. You got to be able to do it in increments, but allow that to continue to flow. And that's what's worked for me. So I know I've went on a bit, and I'm going to keep going on, because I know for myself and how I've had to operate and move, I had to get out of some of those older ways that in some conversations I'll see with folks that I have now, like I had to get away from those, because when you look back at it, it's forget what everybody else thinks. I know how it felt for me. I know how I have different goals and aspirations that I didn't feel accomplished. Even in all the things that I've been able to accomplish and achieve, there's been the hellified stuff, especially in my 20s. But there's many times where I hold myself to a certain level, a certain bar, and I still feel that I'm underachieving, but it's because I'm being so outspoken about it. Or there was times where I was trying to receive validation in certain areas. When I realized that the biggest piece for me is going in increments, because that motivation can trick you. It can have you feeling as if everything is good and it's not. That's what happens. Today, I'm talking to a man that did not feel motivated. When I look at my week and my weekend, I still went to the gym. Listen, I still went to the gym. I ain't feel motivated, right? I still went down to the gym. The first day I did 15 minutes on the elliptical, typically what I would do. The second day, I only did 7 minutes on the elliptical, but I still did a few minutes on the jump rope. Came back upstairs. 3 days ago, I got myself back into my diet zone. Uncomfortable, but I pushed myself in that space. Today, I started knocking out some push-ups. Last week I recorded podcast episodes. Today I recorded another podcast episode. Cleaned up my apartment. Didn't feel as motivated like on the work stuff, but hey, still was able to get some traction going. But how I have to look at it is, look, DeMarcus, you still doing a lot of stuff. And this is no comparison, but you moving in ways that other people ain't even moving. Even in what I'm looking at as small, some people won't even accomplish in 6 months for themselves. And so a big part of also working on the intrinsic motivation is giving yourself the internal reward for how you're progressing. And that's me constantly evolving along the way. Like, I've had to tell myself, like, hey, DeMarcus, even though you did not feel motivated like you typically do, give yourself, and I'm still working on this. I cannot say it, like, I'm probably like 40% there, but still give yourself excitement and praise for you being able to show up. Because you know how you're going to get shit popping. You know how you're going to get it done. But shoot, you showed up today. You showed up multiple days. And oftentimes I have to remind myself, and I have to kind of like, people have to remind me to like slow down, and then also to focus on myself. But like when I look back oftentimes in my weeks and my days, I'm like, bruh, DeMarcus, that's a slap in the face. That's really disrespectful for you to even look at yourself in a way that you ain't really did nothing. But oftentimes, where does that come from? Survival mind state. And it comes from us just holding ourselves to such a high standard. But also being in spaces as well, too, where sometimes the external validation don't really do much for you. Because if you're someone that performs at a high level and you may not have those moments of external validation, like sometimes things can feel as if you're not doing as much, but you have to realize that external motivation and external validation, like, or extrinsic motivation and external validation, like, those can be dangerous. So the more that you can really validate yourself and utilize all the outside stuff as like an extra bonus, that's where you become a true winner. And the more that you put your self-worth and your value at the top, like, that's what the game changer is. And I've had to do that for myself. Because the amount of frustrations, the amount of times I was pissed off or feel as if I was underrated or not being appreciated, or people was like on some BS or whatever, like the amount of times I felt that, and then I would be frustrated at myself, where I would keep trying to like push goals or talking points in spaces that didn't present any type of value. Like, the amount of times I did that, unnecessary. When you start to turn things around and when you start to see things for yourself, and you start to find those ways to get yourself excited internally, and then the results start to show up after, hey, life start to move differently. So I'm still in my learning phases. I'm still in this change ways of me moving. And the biggest change is by me appreciating myself even more and putting myself at the forefront. And by doing that, it taught me how to rely on finding the inspiration and motivation within myself versus relying on it on the outside. And I've been forced to find multiple pockets, because when you go through multiple periods of not being able to have extrinsic validation and motivation being presented to you, you have to find it, because you can't go search for it anywhere else. See, sometimes you can be motivated internally, but then you have friends and family that's around you, or people that's around you, where they'll provide motivation even when you didn't expect it. But when you weren't living on your own, or when you're in your own space and you don't know when it's going to come, there's going to be plenty of times where you got to rely on yourself. And then you look at the extrinsic validation and motivation as just like, or external validation as that's just an extra piece of the pie. There's extra icing on the cake. So I went in for a minute. Hopefully this episode makes sense. If you're someone that feels that you've moved like this as well, talk to me. Like, share your insight on how you move and operate. But I thought this was like a good, real raw episode about just being honest about how I ain't felt motivated. You know what I'm saying? But like, not my typical motivation, but I got up to find me motivation for the day. I recorded a daggone podcast. I've been sitting here for over an hour, did multiple iterations, and then now I'm finally about to be at one where I've done for 40 minutes. Now I feel motivated to do some other stuff, and I found it within myself. Nobody else told me to get up and do this. Nobody else told me today. Nobody told me today specifically. People have told me this, but nobody today said that, Marcus, you're so dope. You're going to attack the world today. You know, everything's going to align for you. I didn't hear that today. So there's nothing today that motivated me or that a person could do to motivate me. I had to find it within myself. Is there days where people do tell me that? For sure. I appreciate it. But there's many days where I'm not hearing it on that particular day. So I've got to find it within myself. But I've got to utilize things in my life, utilize what people tell me, utilize things that are not going well, things that are going well, to find that excitement within myself. But the biggest thing is knowing and realizing that I'm dope at the core. I'm valuable no matter what type of work that I do, who I'm around, who DeMarcus is at his core is worth something. So that means that no matter if I get the praise or not, I'm going to keep pushing forward. And I know that my work and my expertise is appreciated and valued somewhere. And I'm going to create my own platforms or do what I got to do to make sure that I can be at the forefront of that. Everybody doesn't know how to do that, but they for damn sure better learn how. Because if anything that I've learned in my 29 years of living is that many people can go into these certain states of feeling unappreciated and stuff all the time, but you got to appreciate yourself first. Because the more that you can continue to show up for you, man, that changes everything. I mean, there's plenty of times I don't get the praise that I think that I deserve, right? But I continue to tell myself and continue to show up for me in ways where the right people say what needs to be said, and the type of energy that I feel I deserve, it eventually shows up. But more importantly, my voice and who I am, it impacts people. People appreciate my presence. People tap in with me because they vibe with me. I don't need nothing else, because if people appreciate me and love to hear what I'm talking about and doing based on me just being me, shoot, I ain't got nothing to lose. But I've got to believe that. If I don't believe that I'm valuable or worth it, I can't be talking about the stuff that I'm talking about. I can't sit here and do a podcast episode or edit the content or do whatever because I don't feel worthy of myself. But when I feel worthy of myself, ain't nothing got to move in the way that it's perfect. I ain't got to have an entourage around me or whatever. I ain't got to have people hit me up about all these events or whatever, because I know what I'm creating on the back end or what I'm working on is dope to where when I do pop out, when I pop out like this, what June say? When I pop out like this, I know that pop out gonna be cold. So that's why I continue to find the work and find the ways of getting out of my comfort zone and continue to find those ways intrinsically, internally, however you want to put it, to allow myself ways to keep pushing forward. So it's your boy DeMarcus. This is an episode of the Life of a Multifacet, one of my more longer ones here recently, but I just had a lot of rambling I wanted to do, and if you get some time, check it out. So I'm holla at y'all. Peace.